The Behemoth Brewing Company presents the Department of Conversation with Pat Brittenden. Behemoth, give me something hoppy.
Welcome to the Department of Conversation. Today we are extremely excited to have another one of our isolation specials, you could say, the people we talk to in managed isolation. Today we have a very wiggly conversation going on with Anthony Field, the Blue Wiggle. G'day, Anthony. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks, Pat. Almost a couple of days, 3 days ago.
I'm very, very happy that you've made some time for us. Thank you so much, because I know that, I don't know, I guess for someone like you, how many concerts would Wiggles do a year? Let's forget COVID, but on a normal year, how many concerts would Wiggles do?
Yeah, well, you know, we do 2 or 3 a day sometimes. So we do about 500 shows. And, yeah.
That's madness. So I would think that for someone like yourself on a normal year, perhaps COVID's not the normal year, that maybe 2 weeks in isolation might be a bit of a dream. You might like a bit of a break and a bit of downtime. But either way, you've made yourself available for us, so we really appreciate it. Because, I haven't told many people you were coming on because I thought we'd just wait and see how we connected, and you always want to do that. But the people I have told have all been very excited to hear that we're going to have a chance to talk to the Blue Wiggle, an OG as well.
Yeah, the OG, yeah. Well, it's been an amazing year for everybody, right? I was a bit scared about coming into isolation because, I've had some mental problems over the years, and I thought stuck with myself for 14 days. And I actually worry about other people. Today I went and saw a psych before I came in, and I said, look, am I going to be in a dangerous position here coming into she said to me, no, you won't be triggered, blah, 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 blah. And I write to her every day. I was actually only this morning, because we're on the home stretch, I was thinking about, I don't know if they really think, but they probably do, but about people who have some sort of mental condition going into a room by themselves. Look, I've been fine, and I really surprised myself because I really have been great, and I've enjoyed it, playing a lot of music, chilling, but it can, drive people absolutely bonkers, I think.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Obviously here in New Zealand we've been quite invested in the COVID story, because we've been one of the luckier and better well managed countries by our government to help those of us out in the community stay away from it for most of it. So I think most of us have we're quite invested in what's happening at the border as well. And I have, and from someone who's invested in it, and also who keeps an extra eye on news for what I do, I haven't heard of any information coming out where people have been particularly struggling. But then again, that would be sort of a macro conversation about what's happening overall. I'm sure in the micro, individuals could find it very difficult, like you're saying, depending on what they're personally going through as well. So I think it's a good thing to remember.
Yeah, before we got in, they interview you and say you want any medication, and then you would tell them you're on antidepressants and things. So I've had a person, which has been really good. They ring up every day. Are you coping? Are you okay? So that's hats off. And in fact, I'm at the Holiday Inn in Auckland at the airport, and they're not set up to do this, but obviously these hotels weren't built for it. But I got to give they've got the Navy running it here, and it is a very tight ship. Excuse the pun, but really well run. So they've had 2 cases while we've been in here from people coming off the plane, and but it's they keep people away from people, and so pretty amazing. I've actually been very impressed with the way it's been run.
Yeah. Have you noticed a difference? And I guess you're not into the Kiwi community yet, but have you noticed a difference, like different vibe, different feel around the COVID conversation between? Have you come straight from Australia to New Zealand, or did you come from the US?
No, we came straight from Australia. So Australia, we've got hardly any. We've got no cases either, and but we don't. You don't have to. If you come from New Zealand, you don't have to go into the isolation. But I think we all understand that this is pretty serious, and I'm just really thankful for these guys taking it so seriously. And New Zealand's done a great job. They led the way, and Australia followed as always, and took the credit.
Yeah, a la Crowded House. Thank you very much.
Crowded House, Farlap,
all those things. I'm sure you get that all the time from Kiwis.
Levington.
Yeah, Pavlovas. It all goes on and on and on.
Yep.
It's great to hear what you're saying though, and Because I think the difference that I also said, like, so Russell Howard, the UK comedian, was just out here, and Bill Bailey's here at the moment. And one of the reasons they're coming here is because of what the government's managed to do. And I looked at Bill Bailey's tour, and I looked at all the prices of the seats, and I did a bit of a toss up, and I looked how many, and it's, it's a $2 million tour, so it's also financially worthwhile for them to come. That seat sales obviously not his take, and that's just my estimation. And it's like it's great because we as the community get to experience these things because of what's happened, because it's been taken seriously. And people, like the Wiggles, or like like the Australian cricket team who was just here, that we won that series, just point that out there quite easily. And the Bangladeshis are here at the moment, and we get to do this because we have taken it seriously, I think, as a country. And I noticed that the other day because Auckland went back into a bit of a lockdown. You've been here during that a little bit. And the people that raised their heads and said, "Oh, I don't want any more bugger this, I don't want any more of this, I've had enough of this, I don't want any more," they very quickly got shut down. Even though we are a little bit COVID weary, we're still at the point where we're going, this is serious, let's take it seriously. You guys can just sit down because the rest of us want to, go back to the rugby or be able to go to our workplaces or whatever or see the Wiggles or whatever it is.
Yeah. I'm with you, mate. I'm hanging for... when I get back to it, like Australia, rugby here is like the religion. Australia rugby leagues, like why? I think rugby league's 2, AFL's 1. Rugby union's about 4 or 5 in Australia. As far as popularity.
Yeah.
But I equate it the same with you going to the rugby. I just can't wait to go to a league game again with a crowd there. And funny thing about the cricket, we've got it. We're managed by a Kiwi. Our manager is a Kiwi, Stephen Cottrell, and he's fantastic. But he's right into sport. And when Australia were playing the T20, when it was down 2-0, and then we got the decider, he put a bet on with me. And if New Zealand won, I have to wear an All Blacks jersey for a day. and halfway through, after the first innings, he said, "Do you want the bet?" And I went, "Yeah, okay." And I knew it wasn't going to go well. But what I did halfway through was I switched over to the netball.
Yeah,
I think it was on at the same time, or even if it was on later. But it doesn't matter. I rang him up and I said, "Double or nothing on the netball, so I've got to wear it twice, 2 days in a row." For you guys, that's a great thing. But the All Blacks have given so much. You were so proud of, but they've given so much pain to Australians over the years. In fact, in some ways, talking about something totally, in some ways, I think they've been responsible for the almost lack of popularity of rugby, because it's very hard to keep watching your team just getting humiliated every time they go out there or beat. So everyone switches to league where we got to, but I think that, this department of conversation, this can go anywhere, right? So I was just sort of streaming there. Is that all right?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Auckland, so I'm in Dunedin now, but I grew up in Auckland. In the 80s in Auckland, it was quite similar. The Auckland rugby team was like the All Blacks B team, the back lines that they had and stuff. And it was a similar thing. And it actually probably drove a lot of the fans almost for the opposite reason, but it also was quite boring to see your team consistently win as well. Yeah, and it probably drove some of the spectators away from Eden Park in Auckland because it was just winning. I mean, I can still remember, and I've told the story before, the ground announcer at Auckland, some team would come to Auckland, let's say it's Manawatu, and the ground announcer would say, "Manawatu, thanks for coming to the ground. We need the practice." And that was literally the arrogance of the aggressiveness
wow.
But then they stood up to it. So it kind of goes both ways, constantly losing or constantly winning. It's what our Warriors probably suffer from a bit at the moment if you're a leaguey. Is every single year, is it the Warriors' year? Is it the Warriors' year? Is it the Warriors' year? And they always just seem to fall short. And I think that's probably affects their certainly their audience at the stadium for sure.
Oh well, I feel like you got to take your hat off to the Warriors. They're in Australia for the season. Like they're not coming home. Last year they did it. Like that'd be bloody hard, So, but they got a lot of support among the. Among Australia, they got people kind of like they're almost like your second or third team, the Warriors, because everyone knows what they're going through. I support the West Tigers, and we haven't made the finals for 11 years, semi-finals. So Yeah.
There are some. I think there are some teams in Australia that Kiwis also are quite fond of. I think we fell in love with Manly when oh gosh, his name's just jumped out of my head. The coach for Manly in the 1980s, the Kiwi coach who was there, Graham. Was it Graham Lowe?
Graham Eady.
Graham Lowe.
Graham Lowe.
And then he brought across Matty Ridge, and so
brought, and he was the Kiwis coach.
Yeah.
He sadly passed away with a heart attack a couple of years ago. But you know what? He was so respected by everybody. You knew his heart. He was totally committed, and everybody loved him. I understand that.
But I also think the West Tigers of recent times have got a special place in the Kiwis' heart because of Benji, coming through that system as well.
See, Benji's like an absolute icon in Australia. If you think New Zealand, you don't think Richie, you think Benji. You don't think, for the majority, not, again, Lee is the most popular. So Benji's and he is so proud to be a Kiwi, he's proud of his heritage, and I love it, man. He's a great fella. Yeah.
Do you, so obviously you're a big sports fan. Is that something you do to kind of, I'm interested in you, because this is the 30-year anniversary, right? You've been wearing that skivvy for nigh on 30 years, although we can talk about in the first couple of shows those horrific Hawaiian type shirts you wore. But I'm thinking it must completely envelop your life. Is sport a place you kind of escape? Like I'm not the Blue Wiggle, I'm just a West Tiger fan.
Yeah, it's but it is part of my life, and it's 30 years is more than half my life. I'm 57, so. I just love it, man. And I love music, and I've got music with me everywhere I go. And I was only thinking today, people would say, oh, you do it for the money, and I don't do it for the money. I do it for the music. I do it for the audience. But when sport, and especially supporting West Tigers, is so painful sometimes. Like, I'm so invested in it. Like, I know today that on the Sky Channel 4 in the hotel, they're going to show the West Tigers versus the Raiders. And I have been, at the start of the season, I've been nervous about this for a week. And I sit in my room. I know I'm going to be disappointed. But I can't wait, man. But the Wiggles, it's just part of my life. And people who 99.9% come up and say, "How you going? Thanks for looking after our kids. You gave me a fun time during my childhood." I mean, it's so good, So it's great.
I think that your relationship, as you describe it with the West Tigers, feels like my relationship a little bit with New Zealand cricket. Because I've described it before, completely not to undermine the serious nature of the words I'm about to use, but I sometimes talk about it like an abusive relationship. Like, the New Zealand cricket team will do abysmally for a season, and I'll be like, I'm away from you guys. And then they'll go through this run like they're going at the moment. Number one test team in the world, they were a couple of weeks ago, and they'll draw me back in and they'll draw me back in. But then inevitably, the results come through that are poor again, and I feel like I've been sucked back into the loving relationship, and then I face the reality of what life really is when they're not well, and it's like a dagger to the heart. And then they draw me back in with the love. I love you, come back in. I love you, Pat, come back in. And then it's a dagger to the heart. And
oh no, well, you know what? They're a really good team now. That World Cup limited overs match, was it with a 50 over match?
Yeah.
Were they against England?
Yep.
Where
they should have won
that game. They should have. I think they did win, to be honest with you. I think that was a bit harsh, but and now they're a really good. With the I think it was it T20? They had the final, the World Cup final in Australia at the MCG. That wasn't the 50 over, was it?
That was T20, and they were the best team all the way through the tournament, and then dagger in the heart in the final.
Yeah, but I'm a cricket addict and fanatic and tragic. I knew they wouldn't win the final because the MCG, mate, they're not used to hitting those. All the New Zealand grounds are smaller, and they were just carving it out. And those extra, whatever it is, meters, I think, was the difference. I was really confident going in. If that had been played in New Zealand, we would not have won. I know that. But anyway, I think mate, get out of that tragic psyche. You guys are a really good team now, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, they're off to the final of the.
I know.
It was
at Lord's.
They've just announced not going to be at Lord's. I can't remember the stadium it's going to be at, but there's a stadium that has a hotel attached to it, and so they're going to do them there because that's how they're going to control the COVID situation. That the hotel is actually a part of the ground, which means they do it there, then they don't literally have to go anywhere else.
What's your see? I think they should have been allowed a vaccination. Because they're representing your country. They're doing amazing things for New Zealand. They're getting New Zealand, back in the minds of everybody as a tourist destination, as a great place. And they're not going to be, is that a controversial? I shouldn't say anything. But I just thought, I was looking at the controversy on the news and I thought, there is an argument for them that they're actually doing something pretty special.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's controversial. I think there's a perfectly good thing to put out there. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, they're not essential workers, but like sport or entertainment or keeping the spirits of a country up is sort of an essential thing. So yeah, I can see the argument. Let me put it that way. If you put that argument in front of me, I can go, yeah, I see what you're saying. That's at least it's a debatable point, if nothing else.
Yeah. Well, when the league was rugby league was the first sport to come back around the world, and when it came back, I just went, oh yes, when everything was locked down last year, and I was just like, oh, this is so good. So, and I understand sport really does, whatever sport you're into, it really does provide some relief from wherever you are, the world you're in. And in the end, it's really probably meaningless, isn't it? Kicking a ball around but do we love it? Yes, we do. Do we get invested? Yes, we are.
I think that's right. It's like when rugby came back here in New Zealand, we went from the Super Rugby tournament between the 4 countries, or 5 countries, I think Japan might be in there, anyway, to it's called Aotearoa, Super Rugby, so it's just the New Zealand teams. And to be honest, respectfully to the rest of the world,
good.
the teams
the
teams that we enjoy playing most of all are our other New Zealand teams. They're always the local derbies, as they call it. And in the first couple of ones, even in somewhere like Auckland, and I don't have a bad thing to say about Auckland. I was born and bred there, and I have no problems with it. People who leave Auckland turn into ex-smokers. Oh, smoking's terrible. You should never smoke. That's the same as people who leave Auckland, but it's not me. So that's said with love. But I think the first 2 or 3 games they averaged 30 or 35,000 at Eden Park, just because rugby was back, and that was enough just to get everyone going along.
My limited knowledge of rugby, I think we had a coach a couple of years ago for the Wallabies who came from the Crusaders. Would that be right?
Robbie Deans. Yeah, Robbie Deans to Australia.
Deans. Yeah. And it didn't work out. I wonder if that's a cultural thing. I mean, are the cultures different? You think Australians and Kiwis are different? I think that with sport, you say that kind of it's interesting that AFL is number 1 because AFL seems to me to be very centralised to Victoria. I know there are places outside there, but that seems to be, the MCG, and that seems to be the heart of it, sort of thing. So that's number 1 in the country. I find that interesting. But I think that it's like we always have this conversation about what is soccer and what is football, right? And the way that I always remember it is the dominant round or oval ball sport in the town is called football. So in New Zealand, we call rugby footy, whereas there is the footy show in Australia as league, whereas they call AFL in Melbourne footy. So it's the dominant oval or round ball sport. Whereas if it's soccer somewhere in the world, they call it football. That's it.
And I think probably one of the things is and this is respectful to all the Australian rugby players, but probably your best athletes go to the other 2 codes first. And so that's probably a part of it.
Yeah, and I was only thinking last night, has there been an All Black go from the All Blacks to league, or is it always league to rugby? No,
I mean, All Blacks, no, that happened a lot more earlier. Like I was just talking about Matthew Ridge, who went to Manly, probably around 1990. I mean, John Kirwan, one of our greatest wingers ever, he started his career playing league. He went to rugby, and at the very end, he went and played for the Warriors for a couple of seasons. And I think that was a bit like Michael Jordan playing baseball. He just wanted to do something from his childhood, you know. And then you've got what's his name? He was the fullback for Waikato, and he went and played. Gosh, I'm trying to think of his name. One of the greatest kickers in rugby league there's ever been. is it Halligan?
Oh, he played for
Daryl Halligan.
Daryl Halligan.
Yeah.
Daryl Halligan.
So he was an All Black. So yeah, there's been some going the other way. But I think it's more that was the era of semi-amateur rugby and professional rugby league. So they went that way for the not just for the money, but money was certainly a nice byproduct.
Yeah, great, mate. No, AFL is in Victoria, South Australia, and Western Australia, number one by country mile. But in New South Wales and Queensland and ACT, it's rugby league. And in North Queensland, I don't know if you've travelled up there, it's like a religion in North Queensland. League is like on every billboard, the Cowboys. Jonathan Thurston's like the big icon of the world, up there.
Yeah.
So, and it's funny coming here because it's just so rugby and All Blacks, which is great. It's all it's so part of the culture here. Yeah.
Well, I guess it's like if you went to America. I mean, you do go to America. If you go to America, it's probably baseball first. That's what they call their national sport, and then after that, it's basketball and football, and maybe tailing off down the end is things like ice hockey and Major League Soccer. So the country you're in has its own religion, and ours is rugby. You're correct, but I think we're also a sporting nation, and we punch above our weight, as they always say, because it is that sort of little brother to the world wanting to knock off the big boys. So I think that drives us probably a bit more as well, trying to prove ourselves. It's probably a little bit of a we are a little man syndrome, little country syndrome we've got, trying to beat all the big guys.
And you do pretty well at it. Or what about the netball? I actually watched this. Australia and New Zealand, like, what a rivalry. They're good games to watch. I actually watched, is it the Constellation Cup?
Constellation Cup, yeah.
Yeah. That's COVID quarantine. I would never have watched a netball game, and now I'm actually, wow, good game, man.
It's always interesting, those sports or those events that really only happen in one or two countries. I mean, rugby league's a bit like that. Rugby league is obviously dominated by Australia. It's the best professional league in the world. And then the UK plays and New Zealand plays. And yes, there are other countries, but that's really it. Netball's a bit the same. There is Jamaica and there is England, but really, probably if you went back and had a look at the, the Commonwealth Games over the last sort of 5 or 6 times, however long thing's been in there for, netball's been in there for, it's probably going to be that it's pretty much always New Zealand, Australia in the final, or New Zealand knocking out Australia in the semi-finals.
Yeah, it's great, mate. It's great. And I'll never bet against you guys again. I learnt my lesson.
So you've talked about, and I was really impressed with, and I can show you, because I got this little system that can do things like this, where I can show you and show other people who haven't seen it. Let me just get my mouse working again. Things that you've done, and you've done quite a. We'll put it on a 2-up so people can see this in the background. They're not going to hear it necessarily because we can talk over it. And I'll put this back to a 2-up so we can see both of us. So there, that's you. You're on one side of the screen at the moment, and your video is the other. And that's you talking about mental health. And it's you telling a really interesting story about how your dad had a massive heart attack when you were 6, and the doctors told you and your family, that's it, say goodbye, he's done. And you use the word miraculously he came through. And then you at 11, I think it was, got pneumonia, and the doctor said the same thing, that you were gone burger. And from your dad's experience when he went through his heart attack, that was a factor was how he talked to you and what he told you was one of the things that helped you pull through as well. So, you're talking about people. If people want to look that up, it's called just look up Your Mental Health, Anthony Field. If I only knew, or if only I knew. Sorry, so people can find that for themselves. Talking about mental health, talking about wellness and stuff within the isolation. Tell me about that video, and tell me about your journey for what you've been through and how that's, I guess, helped create the person you are today. Yeah,
well, I guess, Dad. That was a funny thing with Dad. He gave me this I was on my deathbed basically, and Dad gave me this incredible impassioned speech about, he died, he came, had the choice to come back. I came back for you, blah, blah, blah. and he sort of he could see it wasn't getting through to me at 11 years old. He said, look, if you get better, I'll get you Kung Fu pajamas. And it changed everything for me. just diverting, but Dad, 1969, had a massive heart attack, and he died on the, and they told us he wasn't going to, he's gone, but he did come back. But Dad told us the next day, the nurse came around and offered him cigarettes, like it was a different time, but he gave up the smoking. But for me, mental health was it's been I got pretty sick. I got Lyme disease, which was undiagnosed. When I was in the army, I tick bite, and for years I didn't know that I had it. And I'd get these. I lost all my teeth. I got these grilled, but I kept getting infections in my jaw and inflammation in my brain, and I didn't know what was going on. But the inflammation I think was the cause of a lot of my mental health problems, which was depression, because I was constantly in pain. And so over the years, I've been to many therapies, but physically, I'm really good at the moment. I went and saw this doctor in Australia, this team called Pandas that look after chronic illness. And, I'm off the antidepressants for the first time in 11 or 12 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's been unbelievable. But you know what? They served a real good purpose for me. They kept a loop bit in my head which was, telling me things I shouldn't do, but it was constant, and they cut that loop off. So just sorry to interrupt, but on that point, when I say congratulations, it's like congratulations on where you're at your journey. It's not congratulations for getting off, because if people need them, then they're absolutely the right thing to be doing. So just make sure people don't misconstrue me saying, oh, well done, you don't have to take those things anymore. Like if you have to take them, then congratulations on making the decision to have to take them. But where you are at the moment, congratulations. Very insightful, mate. People, they think like, oh, you've got to get off, you've got to get off. But actually, I was smart enough to know, and through counselling, that I actually needed them, because there was a loop in my head that was just constantly telling me, or finding ways that, to end it all. And I was like, wow, man. So for me, it's been incredible that I went to this guy, and, one of the things I did when COVID hit was self-medicate. So not only was I taking antidepressants, I was drinking wine and stuff at night time as well. And I went and saw this guy, and he different way of looking at this. It was, he basically got an MRI, done, and I had inflammation, had encephalitis. So he said, we've got to get the swelling down, but you can't do that if you're drinking.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. So coming here, I was worried, because the temptation is to get a little bit of, help through the day or the night.
Yeah.
But my psychologist said, mate, you just cannot do that. I've been writing to her every day, and I haven't had any alcohol, and haven't. So I've been really, really good, mate. But that was a really good point. But it's funny, people write to me and ask me to come and speak on mental health, and I just won't do it, because I don't know. I'm not qualified. I don't know what you've gone through. I don't know what your symptoms are. I can just talk about me.
Yeah.
But the only thing I can say to people who are struggling, talk to someone and get some help. Find out what works for you, but you've got to get outside yourself, and that's hard when you're actually depressed, to actually feel like I can even talk to someone. Am I worth talking to someone? It's a terrible little trap you get into.
I was about to re-have a look at the reason I'm pointing there, that's where my screen is. I was about to re-have a look at that video that I just watched, because you say you're not an advocate and you don't talk about it, but I suspect that's probably been seen millions of times, and what a great message to be seen. So you sort of are doing it in your own way, telling your story. Because I was thinking, I was going to use the word advocate. You've said you're not, but you speaking about mental health, and then you've got Greg speaking about heart health and that kind of stuff. The Wiggles is kind of, as individuals, but maybe more as a group, is turning into this, reaching outside children's entertainment into impacting, the adult world in a pretty serious way.
Yeah, well, it's funny, with all the success we had, I was one day really down in the dumps. My brother, no fault of his own, working man, my brother, eldest brother, and he laughed at me and he said, "What do you got to be depressed about?" And not realizing that it's actually and I understand, I totally understood what he was saying, but your body's not like that, your brain's not like that. Greg has is doing an amazing job trying to get defibrillators into all the clubs and venues and houses everywhere he can in Australia. And hopefully New Zealand does the same, because they say it saved his life. I was there. It was quite incredible. He had a massive heart attack and he was gone. Yeah.
I don't want to make sure the sound's down, but just while we're talking about it, I'm gonna bring up some imagery of that day that it happened. I'm not gonna play it all out, because I had one question about it. This is the concert that you guys were at when it all happened, and Greg, and they caught it on camera, Greg, and I think it's sort of, and that was Greg going down in the sort of back corner. Yeah. But the thing I was going to ask about that is, did you guys know straight away the serious nature of it? Because Murray comes back on stage and seems very calm and just goes, oh, Greg's not feeling that well. We're going to leave it there. Or was it like, oh, Greg's fainted and you weren't aware what was happening until later? Or was Murray just using an incredibly appropriate tone at the time, but realizing, holy shit, this is pretty serious?
No, mate, it was Greg suffers from something called orthostatic intolerance, which is why he left the Wiggles originally. He faints all the time. So he'll be standing talking to you and he drops. And it will happen before you go on stage. It happened a couple of times in America where 30 seconds out from show and he's dropped. That's what we all thought it was.
Okay.
So, and all he needs is a couple of salt tablets and he gets back up. So, yeah, we thought, poor Greg, he's done it, but that's what it was. The curtain shut, or something. We went back, and one of our roadies, who Tyra Harrison, is Jimmy Barnes' granddaughter.
Wow. Cool.
And she's like, Greg, it's not, and that's when it hit us.
Right.
So it was just, oh man, it was, and then his parents came back while he was, and it was horrific to watch.
Well, the reason I didn't want to play the full footage of that there is actually, and I'm not saying this to get people to go and seek it out, but I've watched it a couple of times, is actually the noise is the most, because you don't really see anything, but the noise, you can hear noises of breathing and stuff, and that's the thing that's most distressing, I think, certainly for me to watch it. So it's just so cool that, well, it's weird to say it's so cool that, like, he's still here, but because it implies it had to happen for him still to be here, but it's, I guess, it's lucky and lovely, and I don't know, you use the word miraculous about your dad, but miraculous that the right people at the right place at the right time were there to still have us, Greg, at the moment.
And you know what? I was going to say, oh man, okay, oh yeah, he just wrote to the Wiggles. We're all buddies, right? But he officially wrote and said, guys, can I use that footage when I do my speeches, because I want people to see it. So he actually wants the word to get out that this was, and this is what saved him. So he's using that, yeah. But you know what happened? The untold hero of that, there was a firefighter there, because it was a bushfire relief concert, all the bushfires that went. So we were raising money for the bushfire relief. And there was a firefighter who'd done 32 years, and his last shift was next day. So his name was Jack Baldwin, and he was, we gave him a big presentation before the show and all that, say thanks to all the fireys and all that. After the show, when that happened, he just happened to be standing there. Now, he held Greg's head and he directed the traffic. There happened to be a nurse, there was a doctor, there was a couple of our guys that knew how to do it. But it was Jack who was calm. Go get the defibrillator. Do. And no one's ever said it, but we're trying to find him. He's the guy that I think saved Greg, with the incredible team that did all the stuff. It's a real team effort. But he was amazing. And obviously it wasn't his first rodeo, but he was incredible. And Castle Hill RSL had the defibrillator, and if they didn't, we were gone.
Right.
Greg was gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
The one thing that I noticed in your video about your dad, and I don't know if a lot of other people just look over it and skip past it, but there's something I really wanted to ask you about, and that was the white light. And he kind of, I don't know if you use the word chose or decided, but he decided to come back for the kids. And I was fascinated by that. I grew up in the Catholic Church. I would consider myself to be a fairly spiritual person, and that part of the conversation, which you say in the black and white video we just showed, I'm not saying you gloss over it, but it's said matter of fact, then moves on. I want to know if there was ever really conversation around that, and what you personally think of that now. Think about what is the white light, what is the conscious decision making to be able to either go or come back, and what that all means.
Yeah, Dad told us and Ed was open about that he saw a white light, and he basically made a conscious choice to come back. So it was just, I totally believe that happened to him because he was clinically dead. But then high-profile Australian Kerry Packer, he was brought back with a defibrillator, and he said there was nothing. So it's one of those. I guess we'll find out. But Dad, 100% made that choice and told us about it. And he wasn't making it up. But he was a pretty spiritual guy. So
when you did that change him at all? Like, obviously a death experience, or not even a near death, it's a death experience changes people. But that kind of seeing some people come back after they say they've seen the light and they've felt the warmth or whatever else, and it kind of removes their fear of death because they think, that means there's something else. Did the experience of the light and the conscious decision kind of change him at all afterwards? Change his thought process or anything?
Well, he was a great open man, and he didn't judge. And I think after the heart attack, he totally chilled out. Whereas in the old days, 1960s and early 70s, we used to get, used to give us a clip around the ear or a boot up the arse. He said to us, we're 7 kids. He said, "You're too old for that now. I can't do that anymore." But one day, this was the most amazing thing, and this is going to sound crazy, right? I still remember he sat us down at a table. Now, that would have been 1971, 72. And he said, I can't explain how this was a lesson for us all. He said, "I just want to say to everybody that I was wrong about the Vietnam War." And now he was a very conservative man. And we'd had, my brother Patrick had many arguments with my grandfather, with Dad, about the Vietnam War. And they were like towing the Australian government line. The Aussies were there.
Yep.
And Dad doing that said to me, "Okay, you can change your mind. You can see the light again. I can make mistakes in my judgment." And that's what he was basically saying. And that gave me freedom to say, "Hey, I can make mistakes." It was a really great parenting moment. And he was not meaning it to be that. He was just saying it. It was after the heart attack. And he just said, "I've weighed it up and I was wrong." And I wish everyone was like that,
I think what that speaks to as well is as a species, as human beings, it's evident that A, we never stop learning, and B, we should always be reflectant on what we've said and done and be open to change.
I love and I think you've got to be open that people can change, because I remember saying something sometimes, and then people in the Wiggles, they say, "But you," and I said, "No, I just changed my mind about that." And I think they're used to that I can change my mind, because you've got to be ready for people. Don't pigeonhole people. It was a great experience anyway.
It does sort of bring me into a conversation I wanted to have with you about, also how culture has changed and how we change our perspective based on a cultural shift. And you see that a lot with comedians, overseas, and you hear them, the things they said and did in the 1990s that they're now being held accountable for and that kind of stuff. It must be unquestionable that a band, that a group of entertainers that have been around putting out content for 30 plus years look back. And I know that there's the famous one like the Poppadom song, which we don't have to get into, but that there's things in the past that you look back on and maybe you have to shift positions and opinions within the Wiggles as well. Has that been a a conscious journey, or have you guys ever, like, as a, you know, Wiggles Incorporated, sat down and said, you know, this XYZ is not the way the society is moving, so now we need to start, you know, ABC instead?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think it's not because of, you know, corporation. It's actually just what's, you know, more apparent is right. There's sometimes the big discussion I'm having with the other Wiggles is at the moment that we need to diversify. We need, and what I would like to do is have 8 Wiggles, not 4, and everybody wears either blue, red, yellow, and purple, because we've done so many, you know, duets with people from different cultures. We've tried to celebrate. Look, we got it wrong with Papa Dum, but that was actually it was funny because Kimberly, the woman in the clip, was actually a workmate of ours and guided us all the way with it.
Right.
And her grandmother and her mother was in on it, but it just came out. I can see that how it got misconstrued, and poor Kimberly, you know, like it was meant to be a celebration and it didn't turn out that way. But I feel as the years go on, the Wiggles have got to, and it was, none of this was like when we first started, it was just 3 guys at uni and the old mate from the Cockroaches, Jeff, the rock band we were in, and that just was natural. And when the other guys came in, it was just, I didn't even think of, you know, I knew Emma and Simon I'd known for years, and Lockie had been recommended. Didn't even think about cultural diversity, anything like that. But these days, it's so important. It has to happen. And
but that's not even a decade. I mean, 2012, 2013 was when the, you know, the shift happened. And I was thinking about it, and I've written down the word diversity to talk to you about as well, because like Lockie obviously Caucasian, Jeff obviously Asian, you know, swapping a Caucasian guy in for an Asian guy out. At that time, you're saying that, I mean, but obviously then you also swapped in Emma for a female in for a male, but none of that was like a conscious decision. You didn't go, you know, and I think sometimes we can get caught as a society, and I'm not such a fan of saying, you know, you must fill out a quota, because it can be a bit tokenistic, especially if person A is a lot better performer than person B. You know, so there are some, I think it's not black and white, this conversation. Pardon, that's probably an inappropriate term to use when talking about diversity. But in 2012, 2013, you, like the Jeff situation, you didn't go, well, you know, Asian Australian kids and around the world look up to Jeff as this. We should try and find another Asian persona to fulfill that brief.
Which they did with High Five when I think it was they had an Asian Australian and they replaced her with an Asian Australian. So it was not like that with her. But I've got a bit of a mentor. What's guided me for this has been James Harkness, who we did a TV series with him called The James Cafe, and James is from the cast of Ain't You Proud to Beg. He's an African American, incredible entertainer, and James and a couple other, Joanne Jackson and Taylor Jackson, they're all buddies from Ain't You Proud to Beg. And James has been telling me, James about a year ago said to me, you know, you guys, to me, since he was speaking, he said, the power is those skivvies. You've had people come in, you know, we've had Robbie Rakate come in, but he wears a brown skivvy, which was his choice, not ours. We didn't say it. But what James said to us was, if you've got to get someone in, you've got to bring people in, and they've got to wear those 4 colours. It can't be, otherwise it's. So what I'm working out now is, and again, talking to the other guys, it is a bit of a, you know, Lockie, Emma and Simon, they can see the need for it, but they was also worried about, you're trying to, I don't want to replace anyone. I want to bring in people and make the Wiggles more than 4, make it 8, and just those colours. So people all over the world can go, okay, children go, hey, he looks like me, I'm wearing the skivvy. Anyone could be a Wiggle.
So it's almost like
Again,
you're
it
saying the
wasn't-
diversity is in the rainbow color of the wiggle, so to speak. So any kid, any ethnicity can be purple. So purple is the diversity almost.
Exactly. It's not bringing another color, pink colored skivvy for someone from Africa or a Kiwi bringing, green. No, if you've come into being a Wiggles, but we just did this video for in Australia for Elephant, like a version. It was
I've seen that.
We did a cover version.
Yeah.
But we had Jeff and Lockie there. They're both wearing purple. We had Murray and Simon, both wearing red. So it's been done before, if you ask me, that you can have more than 4 Wiggles at one place. And so right at this moment, I'm with, the guys want to do this too. And our management, Stephen in New Zealand, we all see the importance of it.
Yep.
So in the next year or so, I reckon we'll be doing that, and we have to do it.
Isn't it interesting that the conversation we're talking about is popped up in under a decade, 2012, 2013. For people who don't know, I wanted to play them a little bit of this because I think it's pretty cool. One question to ask you about it.
Oh, there he is.
So there's Robbie, our Robbie Rakti.
Have a good day. Hello. G'day.
And that's really lovely. I wonder, just based purely around how the world has changed in the last decade, do you think if you were to do it next year, Robbie would still be the brown wiggle? Like, was there any kind of, you know what I mean? Like, for some people, I wonder, I was like, well, he's got brown skin and they call him the brown wiggle. Would that change if that was in 2022 rather than 2014?
Well, I can tell you with Robbie, he insisted on that. We were saying, Robbie, you can't be, because we're going to get the cop for that.
Oh, so you didn't want it?
Really? Oh, no way. But I'm telling you with Robbie, we've been in contact with Robbie, and he's next time he does Wiggles, which is very soon, because I'm gonna break the news. Robbie's coming on tour with us.
Yay!
On this tour. And he has got a skivvy made by some primary school kids in Auckland, and they've designed it, and it's going to be, I think it's green, and their own designs. And but if Robbie performs with us in the future after this, when we go back, he'll be in either blue, red, yellow, or what's the other colour? Blue, red, purple. Yeah. So yeah, but saying that, that song, Kia Pai Tora.
Yeah.
Excuse my accent, but he wrote that song, and I learned stuff about New Zealand. I still don't know what a tiki tour is. I don't know what, there's, and that's been seen by millions of people now. I think it's like, I don't know how many million people watched it on YouTube. I think Robbie's, but we couldn't write that song about New Zealand. And at the moment, I've asked him to write a ABC alphabet of New Zealand.
Cool.
Which is going to be fun. He already showed me some things. This shows you the difference in Australia and New Zealand. Onion dip. What the hell is onion dip?
It's the best thing in the world.
Well, it reminds me of, in Canada, they have this poutine they put on their chips, and you have to be Canadian. I reckon I'm going to try this onion dip, and I'll get back to you, Pat. I'm not sure about it.
I have to say, the saddest thing in the world that I've seen, and I have to say honestly that I've purchased it as well, is they now sell pre-made onion dip. Onion dip is a Kiwi classic, which is condensed milk and Maggie's onion soup mixed together and then put in the fridge.
Wow.
And there's your dip. And and I think maybe a little bit of lemon in there as well. And it's amazing. It's a complete Kiwi icon. And when you see companies then making it and putting it amongst the hummus, you kind of go, nah. It's not the real onion dip because it's been, because you could never buy it for such a long time. And a tiki tour, I can tell you what a tiki tour is. A tiki tour, a tiki is like a Māori symbol that gets worn around the neck and right. But a tiki tour is what we say for having a bit of a drive around. Where are you going? Oh, I'm going on a tiki tour up north. Like I'm going on a bit of a holiday, but I don't really know. I don't really know where I'm going. I'm going on a bit of a tour, around a bit of a drive. So probably, in Australia you talk about going bush. It's not quite going bush, but it's a tiki tour is going for a bit of a drive. Like if you were driving on holiday between Sydney and Brisbane, which is a drive I'd done when I was a kid, we'd probably call that a bit of a tiki tour because we're having a look. We're stopping on the way. We're having a bit of a look. That kind of stuff.
Brilliant, man. Yeah, there are differences in our cultures, aren't there? We're very similar, but there are a lot of differences, and that's why I love being here too. It's great.
I think a lot of the differences is probably also respectfully to those of us who are descended from colonizers, is also the basis of what we did with our Indigenous people at the start. Because you can't really be in New Zealand without having the Māori story be a part of your story. Like I say this all the time. Like I'm not Māori. You can see I'm so Irish. I'm almost pale blue. That's how white I am, But I still consider the Māori story to be a part of my story because I'm a part of New Zealand. When I often say that to people I talk about in Australia, they kind of go, I've never really considered the Aboriginal story to be a part of my story. But I kind of like, because that's the story of the land, and I'm part of the land, whilst culturally I'm not part of it, it's still a part of my New Zealand story. And I'm not saying that's everything, but I think, and I'd be very clear, I'm not saying Māori have done well via the Crown because they've been screwed over incredibly with the treaty. Yeah. But there is still a different level of being screwed over by the Crown and looking for recompense and being hunted and killed, up until having babies taken away and that kind of stuff, as would happen. Not to get into a political conversation with you, but as with other cultures around the world with their Indigenous people,
Well, I've got a lot of great mates, First Nation mates who educate me. And only last week, Richie Allen, who we've done a lot of work with, he's a Ngunnawal people. He said to me, the difference between the story in New Zealand and our story is that we had 500 different language speakers, and they didn't get together. So the guys over the hill weren't your friends. You can't talk them the same language anyway. So they couldn't have a united front.
Yeah, right.
Against the English, and so there was no treaty for sure. I think we've got so much to learn in Australia from our First Nation people. Yeah.
I always want to make sure I have the caveat out there, because some people would hear what I've just said and say, "Oh, Pat's saying Māori have got it good." I'm like, there is a long uphill struggle to go. I'm not saying that, but I am saying there is a difference for what was attempted here versus what was attempted when the British or English went to most countries. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's necessarily 100% good. It's not 100% good, but it's different. There's a very good book called Bible and Treaty. A guy called Keith Newman wrote it, and his presupposition, I guess, or his investigation looks at how the treaty was signed, and his position is, when I say his position, it's all researched, is that when the treaty was signed by a group of people around it, there was a Bible in one hand and the treaty in the other, Bible and treaty, and that they were trying to do sort of things in a quote-unquote Christian way, but maybe more in a Christian way, quote-unquote, as to what people think the Christian church should be. Not what you hear it being about a lot today, but sort of that real heart of reconciliation and bringing people together. Now, I'm not saying that worked, but that was sort of, it would appear to be where some of the people involved around the treaty were trying to do of the era.
Yeah, right, mate. Yeah, well, in Australia, we had this amazing. Things are changing a bit because Australia Day itself, it celebrates the day that Captain Cook arrived. Now, of course, to most of the First Nation people, this is the Invasion Day, and I wouldn't have even thought of that that side of that opinion, that voice 20 years ago, because it was you wouldn't hear it. But the last couple of Australia Day, in inverted commas, that I think people are starting to change, and I'm all for changing the date. They want to make it May 8th, which is mate. May 8th.
Nice.
It would be a nice day, mate. I tell you what, which is my birthday too, by the way. But, yeah. So hopefully things are getting better. Hopefully we're listening more and learning.
I think when it comes down to it, I don't think dates of things actually matter necessarily. I think it's the intention and the heart behind it a lot of the times. So Waitangi Day here was when the treaty was signed. Similar sort of thing. There are some people who consider it to be a terrible time when Māori lost their sovereignty, etc., etc. Other people celebrate it. Other people look at it to be New Zealand Day. There's other days coming up, and just our government now has promised us a new public holiday sometime in June. I think it starts next year, which is going to be Matariki. So Matariki is a Māori New Year. And it's all based around the stars. Matariki, the star constellation Matariki, is the same constellation as is on the Subaru symbol. Is it Pleiades? I can't remember what it is. But it's all about planting crops at the certain time of year, so it's a movable one, and we're just starting to bring that in. And I think it's cool. So it's not just going tokenism, Māori culture, oh, look good on our tourism sort of thing, but it's like bringing into quote-unquote mainstream New Zealand, what actually were some more Māori customs and dates and why they should be celebrated and affected as the whole country. And man, even for the rednecks out there who aren't a fan of it, dude, you get another day off. So how can you complain about that at the very least?
Yep, there you go. That's great. No, that sounds good. Again, with the Australian stories, there are so many different language speakers that you can't just say one thing for everybody, which is one of the challenges, I think.
Has it evolved into a place where there is a more common language? Because I mean, it's the same for Māori, not the different languages, but there's different dialects. And some people didn't sign the treaty. Some tribes didn't sign the treaty. So there are also some groups who say they don't want to adhere to the treaty because they didn't sign on. But with society coming through and the years going on, has the language evolved to being more common, or is there still like 500 dialects?
I think there's still how many dialects there are, but one thing that Richie was telling me, which is like the didgeridoo is from Arnhem Land, and that wasn't played by, but so many more people around Australia play it now. Because it's a symbol of First Nation, but actually traditionally it was just up in Arnhem Land, so,
which is right up the north in Northern Territory, isn't it?
Yeah. Do one time we were travelling through the Northern Territory and we were in the middle of nowhere, and there used to be no speed limit on the only till recently in the Northern Territory, there's no speed limit out of Darwin. So you could, and I fell asleep, and Captain Feathersword, Paul Paddock, was driving. And I woke up and he was doing, it was like 190 Ks in the middle of nowhere. And the Northern Territory, we saw buffalo on one side, wedge-tail eagles hitting these buffalo that were, being hit and were dead. And we're driving along and we looked over and we saw First Nation people who were walking, and I'm telling you, there was absolutely nothing that I could see anywhere. And they were wearing AFL footy jumpers and bare feet. And I said to Paddy as he was driving 190 Ks an hour, that looks like a mirage to me, because where are they going? And barefoot, desert. It was one of the most amazing things I saw. And then we got to Alice Springs, and we went for a walk up these hills in Alice Springs, and we looked over, and I'm very privileged to see this, but we saw some people having a corroboree, not for tourists. It was just, the corroboree, the traditional dance.
Yeah.
Religious. And Patty and I just sat there, and we didn't take photos out of respect. And we saw them do these incredible dancing. And when they finished the dance, there's nothing for clapping, nothing like that. They just turned around and then they do another one. And we just sat there just looking in wonder at this incredible things that we were lucky to see. But it reminded me of, I'm bringing it back to my own experience. It reminded me of when you have a jam session on some, playing the banjo with jigs and reels where everyone knows them. And then you just play them in the end. You're not playing them for any audience. So this was a religious ceremony, whatever it was. It was just, on that tour, I saw some amazing sights in the Northern Territory.
It makes me think of what you're talking about when you talk about kind of it's not for the not for the tourists. They were just doing it. They were doing it for themselves. It makes me think of the culture we have here in New Zealand, the Māori culture of hukas. And I mean, most people see the haka and they think about the All Blacks and stuff. But the thing that gets me most of all, this is a principal of a school retiring. And so what they do to honour the principal is a haka. Wow. So I being honest with you, to me, like if I'm watching the All Blacks or whatever, more often than not, the haka is more emotional to me than the national anthem. So I find that to be a really, I don't know if I can use the word spiritual again, but an experience where we've got this thing in this country that some from the outside look in and say, what are these people, sticking their tongues out and jumping around and making aggressive sounds? But I see it, and I think a lot of Kiwis see it, as not for the cameras, not for tourism, like you're saying, but just so respectful. To see a haka by a group of school kids at the front of a funeral procession and stuff, it just here every single time, right here. It's so different than, I mean, it's just, there's something about it.
Yeah, I hear you, mate. I do. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. The haka, for an Australian, watching the haka, and what's your opinion of rugby teams standing up to it? Because
love it.
I do too. I don't. The haka's telling you, you're in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it says?
Well, it's a challenge. Haka is a challenge.
So I remember the French one time. I liked when they actually. I don't know. Are you meant to just sit there and take it? Like I remember years ago the Kiwis versus the Kangaroos, and the Kangaroos got in all sorts of trouble for standing up. But yeah,
I was going to show you one. There's one here that the best response I've ever seen to the haka, and I think I've got the right one here. I'll bring it up. Is against the Welsh actually, and Welsh responded to it. And then what the Welsh did was they stood there. You see this? They wouldn't leave the line. Look, see, Welsh are standing there going, "This is our house. You guys leave first."
I love it.
So the haka's over, and the Welsh have decided this is our building. You guys can turn your backs first and go away. And both teams have this stare down. I love it.
Oh, that is brilliant.
And so the referees have to come in and go, all right, boys, off you go.
That is brilliant.
Look, they're still standing there.
Fantastic.
And then the All Blacks turn first. The All Blacks turn first and leave.
Great,
so
mate.
I have to be careful to be very clear and say, it's not my culture. I don't completely understand it, and I can't speak on behalf of it. There are some people who talk about the kind of respect you should show the haka, but I think if you are being challenged with something, to respond to that challenge in whatever way you want is pretty much okay. David Campese, obviously one of the famous Wallabies of all times, he didn't ever face the haka because he used to go into the 22 and run backwards and forwards and just stay warm because he didn't want to. And you know what? It wasn't disrespectful. That was his preparation, what he wanted to do. I find that okay. Others would think that's disrespectful not to receive the challenge, but I think I love it. I love watching, like that Welsh one. To me, is still like my pinnacle of watching it because they're just like, our house. We receive your challenge now. You can go and get ready. We've received it, and we'll wait for you to go and get ready. I loved it. Fantastic.
Yeah, great, mate. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, I just as sport psychology, I think it's a court of respect and all that, and I love it. But I feel like you must have a right of reply, because that's. You're there, you're standing, exactly. The Welsh did it brilliantly.
Yeah.
The French did it a while ago too, I think.
Yeah.
One time the French sort of moved their line forward. I love that too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the Australians, God bless you guys, for a while decided they'd start doing Waltzing Matilda. And they'd have the guy with the guitar and the thing, or like the countryman, the
John Williamson.
Yep. And he'd be a one so jolly twag. And great song, but you know, as a response to the haka, I'm not saying it's inappropriate after what I've just said, but it was an interesting and a unique way. I wonder, and I love seeing the Australian rugby team starting to incorporate that Aboriginal art on the thing, like the First Nations jerseys. I think that's amazing. And I wonder if, 50 years from now, when we're all gone, that maybe if the haka and that kind of representing your Indigenous people on the sports field is a real thing, who knows, maybe there'll be more of that for the Australian rugby team as well, especially because the All Blacks have kind of set that up as an appropriate thing to do within rugby. I don't know, maybe one day.
The All-Stars game, the Indigenous All-Stars did their own, haka. It's not a haka, but they did their own war dance, I suppose you'd call it. But, and after it, I loved it. Both teams came together and before the game, they both did, the Maoris did the haka, then the Indigenous All-Stars did their version of the dance and came together, hugged, and then played a great game. And it was fantastic. So, yeah.
Hey, I wanted to ask you about representing yourself as a wiggle on something. It's called as a sports radio. Sorry, I'm going into my fridge because I want to get something out. So we had a black cap in the other day when they were in Dunedin and had a bit of a chat with them. And I've got these guys here are sponsors of the podcast, Behemoth Breweries. And so I said to him before the show, do you want a beer? And he looked at his manager, or the media manager, and he said, "Oh, shall I have a beer?" And his manager went, "Well, probably not in that shirt," because he was wearing his black cap ski. He goes, "But if you want, you can just pull your own shirt on and then, do whatever you want." So he was quite reasonable. He was just like, we want a certain representation as a black cap, and drinking beer on camera may not be the thing. But if you just want to pull on your T-shirt and have a chat, then go for it. Do you have, and I was thinking for you guys, being children's entertainers, not just like children's icons like a sporting star would be, but children's entertainers, do you ever come across that kind of thing where you sort of can't or won't do something publicly that can be pretty innocuous, but just because of the people who are, for want of a better word, your customers?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, we did do fruit salad, yummy, yummy. We didn't do have a chocolate, So we actually took it seriously. Murray, I remember I wrote fruit salad, yummy, yummy. And Murray came to us one time and said, I think there was a Nestle or one of those brands were wanting to sponsor a tour, and he said, "I don't want to do it. Kids get enough pressure to eat, crap food. So let's just stick to the hot potato and cold spaghetti." We had a song, "Drink Water," drink some water. So yeah, it's pretty obvious we have to stick to that. And if Coca-Cola wanted to sponsor a tour, I don't think we'd do it. So what about
if you're doing something outside the actual tours? You go to a radio station, you've got your blue skivvy on, because I think about your skivvy sort of like as the black cap shirt, and the radio station says, "I have a beer." Are you cognizant of what you're doing then, and would there be things that you wouldn't do in the skivvy, forget on tour, but doing other things?
Yeah, for sure. If the cameras are off and you had a red wine in your hand, but then someone brought out a can, you put the red wine down, because it's not. It is it's like the footy jersey. Yeah.
All right. So there's that. I guess that's like you were saying before, and when I talked about Wiggles Inc., I wasn't necessarily talking about the corporation, but just talking about the group around it. I guess you've got that. Every group, every corporation, every business, every whatever it is, can have a situation where they say, these are our standards, these are what we will and won't allow. And I guess, not to try and sound dictatorial, that's probably just what you're saying, that when you've got the skivvy on, it's a persona, it's a certain expectations are there. Yeah,
but can't delve into anyone's private life or anything like that. If you can't dictate any of that stuff. And so, I think it's just common sense. You can't be sitting there in Wiggles outfit having a cigarette. Not that I do, but yeah.
Well, that's a good point. So it's smoking and that kind of stuff from any of the Wiggles. I was also going to ask you, this might be a bit of a cheeky question, but there's recent news articles about, well, this wasn't recent, this is quite a long time ago, but about, certain kind of attention from adult females that the Wiggles can go through. That is something that's out there as well. Obviously not that you encourage or ask on. Your adult fans and stuff, because you guys have been around 30 years. So, you were you were singing songs and stuff to 5-year-olds who are now 35. Do you have that kind of fan base that's adults only because you were their childhood songs? And do you ever get any sort of attention that way?
We get a lot of 35-year-olds, 30-year-olds who grew up with us. And I just have, there's a real, it's like a friendship thing, you know, like it's pretty well always just ever about, you know, has Murray still got that guitar, or, you know, the questions asked. There's no, in fact, on Twitter yesterday, someone wrote up, you know, what happened to Murray's guitar with the stars on it? And I wrote to Murray and said, Murray, what happened to the guitar? And he said, it was your guitar, you know, back. I didn't even know it was mine. But things like that, I you know, there are certain lines you just don't want to cross, you know, like that you would never cross, you know. So, yeah, it honestly doesn't happen. Has it always been that? Like, have you always been really cognizant of the image you're putting out there? Like when you're in your 30s or late 20s, when you kind of started mid to late 20s, you know, there was a lot of attention, and there would have been attention from all sorts of people. Was it ever sort of rock and roll lifestyle, or was it always we're children's entertainers, let's stick to children's entertainment? No, it was always with children's entertainers. But when we were doing 3 tours of America that went for, 2 months each or longer, and we were traveling by bus, and the Wiggles were massive at the time. So you would go out to, and, you know, you're in your 20s, single guy, you know. So, yeah, you would have some late nights, and you met some amazing people. So but, you know, you always knew who you were, but you still there was some pretty wild nights, you know. Yeah.
Wild night. So like one too many bits of jelly, because it's wild nights for children's entertainment. Hey, you mentioned you mentioned Paul Paddock before, driving 190 kilometres an hour. I was thinking, I read about how you guys decided to give him a feather sword because you didn't want it to be dangerous, but that's why he probably didn't drive the big red car. Because obviously, if he's going to do 190, that's another thing. But I wanted to ask about him. I mean, my kids are now in their teens, so we were following you guys through the first decade of this year, of the century, and so we came in after Big Red Car, and we came in after Hot Potato and Fruit Salad. But those were still the big songs, sort of in the early 2000s. And Captain Feathersword was very much a feature of, it would appear, daily Wiggles activity. Is he still around, still involved? How much does he still do with you guys, if anything?
Paddy's still on the road. I actually can see him from my balcony in this quarantine hotel. Now the guy's the funny man on and off stage. He's just a great fella. But Paddy's one of those brains that goes, like I was saying, 190k, A to B. Like in New Zealand on this tour, I'll have my car with whoever comes in my car, but they know that I'm going to stop at every tourist destination and get a photo, because I love. Whereas Paddy, he gets in that car. We call him Paddy, Paul Paddy, but he'll get in that car. If he has to go from Invercargill to Dunedin, he'll hardly stop. He's just like
at 190.
Well, he won't do 190, but he used to get he actually did get a lot of speeding fines, and he stopped driving for a while. He's one of those psyche. That's why I was really worried about him in the quarantine. But he got one of those walking machines in there, and he's doing 2 hours a day.
Wow.
Because he just can't. He's not a cooped up type of guy,
right? You know,
so yeah, great fella.
So sorry, just to so he's on tour with you this time around. We're going to see Captain Featherstone.
Yeah, Paddy's here.
Very cool.
Yeah. So but you won't see him too long after the show. He'll be gone.
Right. He'll be in the car heading to the next destination.
Mate, he's one of those guys. Honestly, he gets off stage and he's got it all worked out. It takes him 5-10 minutes at the max to get in the car and go.
Yeah.
And whoever's with him feels such a pressure. We love him. Don't get me wrong.
2012, 2013, and thanks for your time. We'll start to wrap up now to let you go and do stuff. Although you've had 300 odd hours in isolation, I'm glad we could join you for one of them.
It's been great, mate. Thank you.
The new team, Emma and Simon and Lockie, who came on board between 2012, 2013, and obviously yourself that stayed on. what was that like? What was that like with the transition? My understanding is Greg and Jeff went first, and Murray wanted to go at the same time, but you guys kind of decided because there was already two wanting to move on that maybe Murray could stay for an extra year, the red wiggle for those who aren't au fait, to not have such a big change. But then in 2013, Simon came on board, and now you've got the newer crew sort of thing. Was that a tough time going through that transition? Was it like a, where everyone moves on and this is a natural progression? What was it like?
Obviously, it was really hard. We toured around Australia to audiences that were, 80 people in 1,000 people, thousands. No one knew who the guys were.
Right.
Every 3 years in early childhood entertainment, you get a new audience. So they hadn't seen these guys on television. We did really outback. We did Broken Hill, Cobar, all these places just in the middle of nowhere, which are great towns, by the way. But no, it was a really tough time. And but Murray and Jeff actually at one meeting actually announced the same meeting. We were having a big board meeting. They're still on the board, but they said, we just want to pack it in. And there was some talk about selling the Wiggles and moving it away from us. And I said to the guys, look, I really don't want to go. I just want to stay. And I think I can, I reckon this can work, But so for that first year or so, I wasn't sure that was a good decision. But it got on television and things happened, People took to the new guys, which was great, So, yeah.
So there was talk of selling it. Was there ever just talk of if Bono leaves U2, let's just stop U2? Was there ever talk of just that this is it, we'll wrap the whole thing up?
No, I'm glad you said that because that's what I worked out when Greg left, when Sam left, when Murray and Jim. It's actually not like a rock band.
Yeah.
Because you've got Dorothy the dinosaur, Wags the dog, Henry the octopus, Captain Feathersword, and you've got other Wiggles. And in fact, the whole thing, like if I left tomorrow, if Emma left tomorrow, if Lockie left or Simon left, it would keep going. We've got so many good songs. We've got such good music, and we've got a good early childhood-based philosophy. And so, it really wasn't like Mick Jagger leaving the Stones or when Michael Hutchence left In Excess.
Yeah.
Because
the group is spread. It actually feels more like a team. So when Aaron Smith, our All Blacks halfback, when he leaves, they get another halfback. He can never be an Aaron Smith, but he can be the best whoever the next person is he is, and the team still goes on. It's the same black jersey with the same number 9 on the back. That's kind of what you're saying about the coloured skivvies, isn't it? It's the skivvies remain and a new body encases them.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll be more than 4. That's my plan in the years to come.
I'm not to ask you the most obvious question. You probably get this a lot, and I apologise about it. But just because we've talked about the longevity and stuff, is what about yourself? Can you see you doing this for another 5 years, another 10 years, another 2 years? What are you feeling?
Well, it's actually changing. With COVID, we've hardly toured. This will be our first tour for a year in a year, or longer than a year. So it's more about TV and recording now. So, I can look. I feel like I'm still producing the music and still directing the television, and I feel like we're doing some really great stuff about to come out because we've got a set. We've put out the Wiggles back in a set like the original Wiggles in a house in a town.
Yep.
But no, I feel like I'd be involved, but if we get more people in, maybe less, I just but I love to still play the music. And so, yeah.
I was gonna cut in there because I'm a very rude person when you said this is your first tour for over here. I was going to say, thanks, Auntie Jacinda. So if people want to find out about more that's going on, thewiggles.com.au, and I'm guessing if I click on your tours thing, there you go, New Zealand. Oh, you've got some other ones kind of lined up, but are they to be consumed? There's the New Zealand one there. We're all fruit salad tour. Canada, USA, UK. Oh, they're notifying me. So New Zealand is what it is, eh?
And Aussie, we'll go back and do a real big tour in Australia, which is great too. I love it. Once we start this New Zealand tour, it'll be so great. It'll be just so good to be back on the road.
Hey, Anthony Field, the Blue Wiggle, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for giving us some time in your managed isolation hellhole.
I didn't say that.
No, you did not say that. That was me with my tongue in my cheek being a bit silly. It's been so much fun. Look, I don't have the children of the age to come and see you in Dunedin anymore, but maybe I can kind of try and steal a 2-year-old from somewhere. And
Mate, I'll just come back and say hi. And, it'd be nice to see you. Meet you, mate. Yeah.
I was just looking that the weekend you're here, the Highlanders have got a bye, so I can't even invite you to come along to a Highlanders game.
Mate, I love Dunedin anyway. Good food down there.
Yep, real good food. If you love Melbourne, you'll love Dunedin. It's a real similar, obviously scale of economies, but it's a real similar vibe.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Good on you.
Anthony Field, thank you. All the best. Appreciate your time.
Good on you, mate. Thanks. Can't wait to see you all down there.